Do you know the first prophecy about Jesus in the Bible? It is in Genesis 3 and is universally known as the Proto-Evangelium. Proto-Evangelium was a term coined by Martin Luther to refer to the ancient prophetic understanding of the passage where God prophesies that the serpent's offspring will be crushed by Eve's offspring, while Eve's offspring is bruised on the heel. Saint Irenaeus, who was the student of the Apostle John's disciple Polycarp, the bishop of Smyrna, had this to say about the Proto-Evangelium. He, Christ, has therefore in his work of recapitulation summed up all things, both waging war against our enemy and crushing him, who had at the beginning led us away captives in Adam, and trampled upon his head, as thou canst perceive in Genesis, that God said to the serpent, "And I will put enmity between thee and the woman, and between thy seed and her seed. He shall bruise thy head, and thou shalt bruise his heel." For from that time he who should be born of a woman, namely from the virgin, after the likeness of Adam, was preached as keeping watch of the head of the serpent. The word seed used in this passage is the Hebrew word zerah, which is a word that can both refer to an individual or a group, but the pronoun he that follows it is in singular form, as if suggesting that this seed of the woman was going to be a figure that represents a wider group. In fact, there's a name for this in Old Testament scholarship: corporate personality, where an entire group is incorporated in one person, so that what happens to that person happens also to the whole group. As the Apostle Paul said as an example, "For since by a man death came, by a man also came the resurrection of the dead. For in Adam all die, so also in Christ all will be made alive." So God was prophesying that in the same way the serpent caused man to sin and all mankind to die, a man in the future will redeem mankind from their sin and their death by crushing the very head of the serpent that brought them to their fallen state. This was no other than Christ. The serpent's seed could only bruise the heel of the woman's seed, while Christ tramples him underfoot. Death was defeated the very moment the enemy thought he had killed Christ. T. Desmond Alexander, in his work From Eden to the Mount of God, said this about the Proto-Evangelium in Genesis 3. Genesis 3:15 acts as the fountainhead of the entire biblical story. The story of the Old Testament is the search for this specific seed, narrowing down from Eve to Abraham, then Judah, then David. The Gospel of Matthew opens by explicitly picking up this genealogical thread, demonstrating that Jesus, born of Mary, born of a woman, as Paul puts it, is the precise climax of the promised royal line who defeats evil.